Hi, I'm Farhan Link. I'm a professional options and futures trader, and I just want to go over some trades I took yesterday, which was the 28th of April 2025. So let's get right into it. Have a look at this Nvidia trade where we saw the sell off on the open, and then this 15-minute lower high starts developing, rejecting VWAP here, which is the purple line. If you go down to the 5 minute, you can see it tried to wick below, but then never got flow through to the upside, and we got this kind of liquidity grab above this recent high, but then immediately started to sell off. And this is then where I entered for kind of this bear flag break, which it then confirmed here on this struggling to move high. Like there were wicks lower, which were quite dangerous as buyers were clearly trying to hold this. But as they just didn't get any follow through higher, it then sort of cleanly into the afternoon here. Have a look at this Coinbase trade where we saw some selling off the open here for this kind of head and shoulders on the 15 minute, and then saw after this strong selling, saw this clean like buying exhaustion on the retest of these very recent lows over the last few days, and then we just got a nice wick high here for the flush lower. If you go down to the 15, you can also see this rounded kind of double top here on the 5 minute, with then the initial like the final confirmation of the trade being here, this 5 minute candle which rejects these lows and kind of the double top neckline for then the flush lower. Okay, next up we're going to have a look at this Qualcomm trade. This is a very big zone that I was looking for to reject here on the eventual retest after the selling off on the Trump news. And now we finally back at this zone, and this is where I'm starting to look for rejections. And we already got some sort of rejection here yesterday of the open with this strong hourly candle. And if you go down to the lower time frames, you can see that it's kind of double topping here on the 15 minute. And it just seemed like there was some downside pressure here for the flush lower, like the shifting motion, which then turns into trend selling. And we did actually get that here. On the 5 minute, you can see like the entry was quite difficult here. You can see a clear downside pressure making continuous lower highs. And then I guess if you either you're going aggressively on this kind of lower high being set here, rejecting this range retest, or you wait for this 5 minute here where it then rejects the low, the daily low here on the 5 minute candle for the continued move lower. Next trade we're going to look at is this Robinhood trade where we saw where I was actually looking for this to go long off a break of these highs, but it opened up above and just didn't get any follow through and then rushed lower again, at which point I switched to being more bearish, which is super important, being able to kind of switch your biases on the day, because it then started to reject these highs here on the 15 minute, rejecting VWAP as well. And then we get this very strong like double top here on the 5 minute with kind of like a neckline rejection here on this 5 minute candle, where then the break below here is just a super strong confirmation to get into the trade for this kind of bull flag quick breakout lower, which we then actually saw the flush. Even though we thought this was going to be long today, we actually then decided to switch short on a failed break above and then failing back below. Last trade we want to look at today is this Google trade. We saw some post earnings idea was fit to hold this kind of area, hold these lows here, hold this recent high from all the way over here. But then what we actually saw was that it started to fail back below. And then I already saw the initial entry here on this 5 minute lower high, but I thought it was super quick and very difficult to catch, as well as having some high volatility. But then we actually saw the shift lower and making this lower high, where I wasn't a fan of rejecting these lows. Like I thought this was a good setup, but I didn't like going into these wicks lower here. But we then broke below and then on the retest made the lower high, rejecting it for the quick 5 minute like weak lower high here. But this is clearly where the entry then has to be. It kind of struggles to move lower, but then breaks below, and then we see the retest of the daily low that was formed up until then on this 5 minute lower high, which is where I then took the entry after not having to taken hadn't taken that one. We saw some downside movement here as well, but initially then saw the eventually saw the pump higher for into the end of day. Okay, so those were the trades from yesterday. As you can see, it was more of a selling off day, which I felt like was made a lot of sense as SPY was at a very important rejection zone and it wasn't able to move back above it. So I was actually looking short, even though there was some upside momentum off the open. And as you can see, there were a few trades which I did manage to take, a few trades which I did miss yesterday as well. But that's just how it is. That's the game. And it's important to then continue working hard and looking back at your trades, analyzing what you did wrong, maybe what you didn't even do wrong just because it didn't fit your strategy. I know it's always very frustrating when you have an idea and it starts to work out, but you're not in the trade. But at those moments, you've got to like be able to look back and see, did I do anything wrong actually? And on the Coinbase and the Qualcomm trade, both of them were very difficult entries, the way I trade at least, and thus also not the most liquid options, and therefore the risk just wasn't quite there that I liked, so I didn't end up taking them, even though they worked out really well. But with that being said, stay safe out there, traders. SDG.